Welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Podcast, hosted by CRM technology and sales process expert Christopher Smith, talking with sales leaders that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. Listen to find out how the best of the best achieve success with their team and CRM technology. And remember, unless you are the lead dog, the view never changes.
Welcome to Sales Lead Dog. Today we have joining us Jeff Diamond. Jeff, welcome to Sales Lead Dog.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you here, Jeff. Jeff, tell us a bit about your current role and your company.
Sure. So I work for LexisNexis Risk Solutions Group, the healthcare division of that group. My current occupation there, my current role is as Senior Vice President of Commercial Operations. What that means more functionally is I have responsibilities over the sales organization, account management organization, our sales operations teams, our strategy group, and our marketing teams for the division.
That's a pretty broad spectrum of responsibility.
Yeah, it is. I'm fortunate enough to have had an opportunity to kind of float around the organization for the past 14 years. So I've picked up a little bit of every functional team, functional group along the way. As I've found myself in the healthcare group, I've been blessed to have some really strong mentorship that's put me in a position to kind of lead a larger swath of this division.
So those of you listening, when Jeff and I did a call to talk about him coming on the show, he asked me, like, Chris, why do you want me on the podcast? And I said, Jeff, one of the things I saw when you look at his LinkedIn profile, he's been at the same place for a long time. And you just don't see that anymore. And you see that progression. So check out Jeff's LinkedIn profile, and you'll see that progression as he moves through the organization. It's pretty wild. Jeff, tell me about the three things that have really contributed to your success for your career.
Yeah, it's a great question. There are a lot of things I'd like to think have contributed to my success. The three that come to mind are probably cliche to some extent, but work ethic is a big one. Sponsorship is another one, and I'll explain that. And then the last is probably just a drive to want to win, right? It's a difference between having a work ethic and wanting to win, right? Some people are gifted naturally and want to win. Others have to work at it. I think I'm probably the latter. I have to work at it pretty hard, but nothing short. There's no shortage of drive when it comes to my own expectations. So those are probably the top three things. You tell me where you want to jump into. If you want to jump into all those, I can.
Yeah, let's dive in.
So work ethic, I'd say, is innate, right? If you want to be successful, I truly believe this. If you really want to be successful, you need to outwork everybody else. Your competition, for example, if that's the way you view career progression or your ability to grow professionally, you just need to be willing to put in the time and the effort. And that's something that I pride myself on. I come from a family of very hard workers. They instilled it in me at a very young age. I've been working since I was 14 years old. Never stopped working through college, through law school, put myself through school at night while working full time to pay for it. It's just a part of who I am, is just keep grinding, keep moving. And I think that gets recognized pretty early on in your career, which leads to kind of the second thing I think that really is core to my success, is that identified me to other senior leaders in the business as somebody who had potential. And those folks kind of gravitated over and sponsored my career early on. Specifically, there was one gentleman who was our VP of sales at LexisNexis when I was just starting there as a sales executive about 14 years ago. He was a young VP of sales, exceptionally young, early 30s. And he just gravitated towards me, gravitated towards my work ethic, and sponsored me through the early stage of my LexisNexis tenure, and gave me opportunities to help provide me with opportunities or access to opportunities that then I had to grab hold of and execute on. So, creating sponsorships and creating those relationships and knowing, how to leverage mentors and sponsors in the organization to not only benefit yourself, but to benefit them was a huge part of I believe, my early success. And certainly even to this day, it's been proven useful for me. And then lastly, it's just a will to win. I mean, we joke around in my company, I hate losing. It doesn't matter what we're doing, doesn't matter what the scenario. I am constantly trying to win. And usually in a friendly type manner, but I'm betting other divisions on who's going to have the best net promoter scores. I'm driving hardest for who's going to have the greatest employee satisfaction scores for the groups across the business. I'm constantly trying to win. And I think all salespeople are like that, right? You're not in sales if you don't enjoy winning, if you don't enjoy the game, and you don't play the game unless you're trying to win. So, I think those three things: sponsorship, strong work ethic, and desire to win, are probably what's driven the majority of my success over here.
I have a similar background to you in terms of I started working, I think at 13, saving money for college and put myself through college and worked the whole time. Do you think people like us, that we just approach things differently because we have that background of, just being a self-starter and doing it?
It's a good question. I'd like to say that there is something unique about people who recognize that hard work is a necessity to success. There is a strong thread of entitlement more now today than there has been ever. I believe, and I'm not, too advanced in years myself, but certainly I've seen it, right? Just through the hiring practices of the teams that I manage, the more and more people we bring on, the more entitled they are as to what should be expected versus what is earned. And I just never was raised that way, right? It was just, if you wanted something, you worked for it, period. I mean, my first real job was at 14, but since the age of 5, right, we got paid a nickel for every load of laundry we folded, or my sister got paid a quarter for every dress shirt she ironed for my grandfather, right? There was just these types of things that just happened from the age of 5 and 6 on, all the way through till, like I said, till today. I feel like I've been working for 30 years straight. So
oh yeah, we had the same rule that if you left a shirt, like a dress shirt in the laundry, someone else could iron it for you. You had to pay them. Yeah. So I would do that all the time. I would just wait for that laundry.
Around the bin, right?
I'd grab all my brother's shirts and I'd start ironing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So you had mentioned something earlier about your sponsor, that he provided you opportunities, but you had to grab hold of it.
That's right.
And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm blessed to have had a really strong sponsor in my career. He ended up going from VP of Sales to being the CEO of our business, and recently left about a year ago. And he was a sponsor of mine, a mentor of mine. He's a close friend of mine. He even helped me propose to my wife many moons ago by sending an email saying that I won a sales trip, right? But a sales competition. But he was just a tremendously valuable sponsor for me and mentor. He, what he did, and he made it very clear, was, I'm not going to hand you anything. Right? That is not my role as a sponsor. And certainly that I'd be failing you as a mentor if I did that. But what I will do is give you access. And by access, then you need to kind of walk through it. So it's more as, there's the door. Now you know where the door is. You know how to open it. And it's your job to turn the handle and walk through it. And he did that, right? So he introduced me to the right people in the organization. He introduced me to the right projects in the organization. Like, here's something that's important to the organization. It might have been at the time, you can think of a project where it was a margin improvement project. We had to look at kind of our labor costs associated with some remedial low-level tasks and how we best optimize that group, not to downsize them, but to optimize to get more out of them long-term. He said, this is a big project for us, and it's all about tuning the engine. How do we squeeze the penny? How do we change processes to go faster? And again, I'm a sales guy at the time. And he goes, I think you're capable of thinking through these types of things, the workflows. So why don't you support that project? And that's what sponsors do, is they give you access, give you opportunity, provide you with an opportunity to try to showcase your abilities and or flex muscles that you maybe have never flexed before, or you didn't even know you had. But he was tremendously useful for me in that way. And it's probably one of the greatest benefits he's given me, is to coach me on how to do that. So now I get to pay it forward. I do that a lot with the folks that I mentor and sponsor in the business, is try to pull them into projects that are meaningful to our group, meaningful to the business as a whole, meaningful to individual teams, and have them chair them or lead them if necessary. And it's a great way to learn quick and test yourself in ways that maybe you've never previously been tested.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Thinking back to those days when you're getting started in sales, what do you wish you had been taught at that time that you now know really would have made a difference?
Oh man, there's so much. I probably would, if more than anything, it's probably how to turn down a bad opportunity. I chased a lot of what I thought were great opportunities, and only to come out, realize later that they're just poor opportunities. They weren't qualified appropriately. I didn't have access to the right economic buyer, or I didn't understand what their true needs were. We weren't the right solution match for what they needed. And I chased and chased and chased, spent cycles and time is the asset of a salesperson. And when you're wasting those cycles and you're wasting that time, it's just time not spent on meaningful, ripe opportunities. So I'd like to think that if I had to do it over today, I would probably spend a lot less time chasing the trash and really trying to dig for gold. Did a lot of that early in my career. Hell, I still find myself and folks on our teams, we still do it. Everybody does it. We innately kind of gravitate towards every opportunity could be the opportunity for us to pursue. That's just not the case. So knowing how to say no, sometimes just turning on business and moving forward with the opportunities that have high probability of success.
Is that your best advice for someone who's getting started in sales?
My best advice for somebody getting started in sales would be to self-educate. There's a lot, they always say that you always hear the term you're a natural salesperson. And what I think of when I hear that is that somebody's got the gift of gab, that they're convincing, they can be a strong orator, they're eloquent, verbally, non-verbally. But sales is different, right? Sales is an art. I mean, it really is. It's an art, and there's a lot that you can self-educate. You can learn. You can read books on negotiation, prospecting, discovery. There's books on customer success models and things along the lines that, depending on what types of sales you're in, whether it's account management, farming, or hunting, or variation of both, that you can start to understand the foundational elements of being a strong salesperson in that domain and start to apply them. And that's just test and retest and test and see what sticks, then rinse, wash, repeat, continue to hone that skill, and before you know it, you just become more of an expert. So if early on, I would say, one of the first things I would probably do is self-educate on what are the fundamentals of sales. My first job kind of just got thrown into sales. It was graduated from school with a business degree. It seemed the most logical type of move for me to go into. There was a lot of jobs out there, and jumped right into this sales role that I really had never sold before. I'd done a lot of work, but I'd never sold before. And it was a learning curve for me. A lot of trial and error.
Do you have a crazy story from those early days in sales?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a crazy story, but it's one that sticks with me. I had my first job in sales. I was working for a company most people know, Office Depot. They sold, office goods, supplies, furniture, printed products, and I was selling to small to mid-sized businesses in the Miami metro area. I was living down in Florida, and you can imagine how many businesses that qualify for small to mid-size. I mean, thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And I had a wide swath of Broward and Dade County. And I remember getting with my sales manager at the time, who was still a very close friend of mine. She's retired now, but just a tremendously strong sales leader. And, at the time, this is pre-cell phone days, but I did have a Palm Pilot, right? So I had one of these things that I thought was so cool, and it was, it allowed me to upload at the time an Excel spreadsheet. And, what I did was I uploaded my entire account list to this Excel spreadsheet. What I did was I sorted it by, who purchased what, for what reason, what volumes, and so on and so forth. And I remember her coming with me. She said, "Who are we going to go see today?" I mean, this was very much a knock on doors of people who have contracts with you and try to get them to move from A to B, or from, buy an X amount to Y amount, whatever the sales motion was in that upsell or cross-sell opportunity might exist. And I remember sitting down and I said, "Before we get going, let's sit down and look at where we're going today, right? We're going to be in this zip code." Pull up all the accounts that are in the zip code. I'm thinking I'm all flashy and doing it. I remember her looking at me and she goes, "What are you doing?" She's like, "What is that thing?" It was just this enlightened moment where she kind of took a step back and she's like, "That's pretty cool." She's like, "I always did it this way." She pulled out this stack of papers and she's like, and I, just kind of printed it out. But it was a moment for me that where I realized that, to work, kind of going back to what you asked, are the three things that made me successful. There's, work ethic's part of it, but, you can, again, tune the engine and squeeze the penny if you work smarter and hard. Yeah. And, one of the ways I work smarter was I'm going to be out in the field and be in this area and prepare for what happens if that person doesn't want to see me, who I can pivot to next that's going to keep me in that sales mentality that I'm selling this product for this reason to this type of customer, cohort of customer,
Yep.
Depending on industry or vertical. And I was able to map out my path on that travel day with my boss, and it was a rewarding opportunity for me to see her, be delighted with. That's a unique way to think about being efficient in a sales motion. If only you can figure out how to sell, you'd be nonstop. And that was literally my first week of work, and I remember being very proud of the idea that I was efficient, and very humbled by the idea that she told me I couldn't sell, or that I was still learning for that matter.
Yep. Yeah, there's that other part of it. You're efficient, but you still got to know how to sell.
That's right.
Yep. So let's talk about your transition into sales leadership. What was behind her? What motivated you to pursue a leadership role?
For me, it's, you'll probably hear this quite often. Your top individual contributors probably make more than your average sales leader. And that's certainly the case. And as I, grew my career, I became a top individual contributor at various different points in my selling career for different solutions, different parts of the business. What really drove me to want to get into leadership was the ability to help other people grow the same way that I felt I had the opportunity to. I am a firm believer in talent development. Right? I'm a firm believer in giving back to our employees. It's cyclical, right? It's as circular as you can get. I shouldn't say cyclical, it's as circular as you can get, which is a satisfied employee results in better outcomes, or the better outcomes drive a satisfied employee. And it doesn't really matter where you start, but the idea being that if you can impact one of them, you can kind of drive customer, employee satisfaction. And employee satisfaction, the primary driver for that is development. Is people feeling like you're rewarding their top performance, that you're managing poor performance, that you're encouraging their skills and their traits. And you can't necessarily do that as broadly as an individual contributor. You can mentor and you can support, but you can't be put in a position to really help somebody grow and achieve what their goals are. And that was important to me, and it's something I look forward to taking on.
What was your biggest mistake or learning opportunity from those early days of leadership?
Expectation setting. I still find myself doing it from time to time, is setting poor expectations for the folks who work for me, or even sometimes for myself, relative to how I would be able to help, and the time it might take and the amount of effort it might take. I think that's something you can't get back. Setting expectations like a first impression. Right? You get one chance at it. And you might have the opportunity to retune that a little bit, but if you set a poor expectation out of the gate, it's really hard to claw back from that. And early on managing a team, and my first team was small. It was 4 people. It was just expectations on what what I expected from them, from a success perspective, or what they can expect from me. Or how we could expect to achieve XYZ result for the business, and setting these expectations that are either too lofty, or that were unattainable for reasons out of our control. And when you get into management, you realize not every decision is yours. You are beholden to support from your shared services, HR to move careers, and talent development to put programs in place, and your product team to help develop the product they need to sell to be successful. And you set these expectations for yourself without thinking about the influences in. If done poorly, it can unfortunately result in the opposite effect of being motivating, inspirational, and supportive to your team. It can be pretty deflating. So it's probably the number one.
So changing from a VP of sales, where you're focused just on the sales team, to now you've got this broad spectrum of responsibility. Was that a difficult transition for you to shift that focus beyond just the sales team?
This is my second tour of duty leading the sales group for LexisNexis. I'll answer that a different way and say the harder shift for me. I grew up in sales, right? So my first true career outside of college was in sales, and did that 12 years really on and off, with hiatus in between, doing some consulting work. It was the transition out of sales and then back in that was more complicated for me. So I had this great sponsor who pushed me in ways to try to lead different parts of the organization. He saw something in me that maybe I didn't see myself at the time, and challenged me to go run the product organization, or the analytics organization, or run our global operations teams, or whatever whatever the flavor of the year was at that point, where they needed help or where he thought I could provide value. And then several years after, 5 or 6 years passed, where I hadn't been in sales. We had a leadership gap as our head of sales, so it was an unexpected gap. And I was asked to step in an interim basis. And I remember feeling, a little overwhelmed about, can I still do this? I mean, again, it's not, you're not born a salesperson, right? It is a skill. It's something you absolutely need to hone and you need to practice regularly, or, you lose that ability to be an expert. So that was pretty daunting for me. Was coming back into sales, more so than making the transition to sales leadership.
What about being responsible for the other groups like marketing and the operations side?
The groups that I currently manage today are we work so closely as a team. My title as commercial operations really is just that, because we cannot, in sales cannot be successful without a strong brand, lead generation engine, and marketing. And our marketing team is fantastic, right? The marketing team doesn't have much to go out and market if we don't have the right thought leadership and the right forward-thinking 3 to 5 year strategies in place by the organization, for which the product management team can execute on with engineering. So the teams that I have are so closely coordinated, right? They're the thought leadership group, the marketing group, they're the engines that feed leads to the sales organization. It is a very, very natural synergy once the 3 groups. I think much more so than we thought there would be when they all folded under my leadership. It was not that big of a stretch to move into marketing. Marketing and strategy. I'd done the strategy role for years previously, so that was more natural. Marketing, I have not. And to be completely honest, outside of the sales department, where I have a tremendously strong senior leader who leads the sales organization, and a very strong marketing leader, and an exceptionally strong strategy lead as well. My role is not to lead those functions; it's to support them and however they need to be supported to be as successful as possible. A lot of times, it's clarity of mission. It's making sure that we are all aligned to the same goals. It's making sure that we understand what the dependencies of each other are. And working through those methodically so that we're not tripping ourselves up. Because again, time wasted is equals sales not made, and the better aligned we can be, the more successful we are. So answer your question in a very long-winded way. The transition to those functions weren't nearly as complicated as a previous transition into product, which was completely foreign to me, or into operations, which was completely foreign. It was actually much more smooth than expected.
That's interesting. So you talked a lot about sponsorship. If I'm listening to the podcast as a young salesperson and I want to go out and get a sponsor or mentor, how should I go about that process?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can only speak from experience in our organization. I just recently picked up a young gentleman who I sponsor now. I mentor about 4 or 5 people across the organization today. And try to do so on a regular basis. And sometimes, mentees stay with me for 6 months. Sometimes it's 3 years. Right? Meeting with one now. Just met with one right before this call. I've been working with for 2 years. Sponsorship's a little different, right? Sponsorship is about access. Mentorship is about coaching and advice, and certainly they can provide access and opportunity, but there is a different flavor there. And sponsorship, I think, is. I'd like to say in our organization, I think more broadly outside of our organization, sponsorship is beholden on the employee, and mentorship is beholden on the leadership team, right? And that's how I think of it. Meaning, when you find a high performer in your organization, all organizations do employee ratings, and they identify hypos and put the talent development plans in place. A mature organization will look at those hypos and say, we need to pair them with a mentor, right? As we develop them, we want them to get the experiences of the best and brightest we have in the business. So people who've been in those shoes before. And that's beholden on the talent development, the sales and the leadership teams to kind of reach in and say, let us help you develop. And sponsorship is a little different. I think sponsorship again comes down to somebody standing up and saying, I'm looking to grow my career, right? I'm looking to grow professionally, even if it doesn't mean career progression, but professional development. And one way I need to do that is to get access across the organization. Now, I'm raising my hand and asking for it. And then it's beholden on the leadership team to say, okay, let's talk about what that looks like and who's the right type of sponsor to get you. The gentleman I'm sponsoring now, frankly, came about because he was a flight risk. He doesn't work for me, doesn't even work in my division. He happened to work for a colleague of mine that I used to work with very closely, ended up managing a ways back. And she called me up and said, this rock star of a young man is about to leave. He's got an offer somewhere else and we can't keep him. And I remember I said, well, let me just give him a call. So I reached out to him and he didn't know me. I've never met him. And the conversation led to why he was leaving. And the reason he was leaving was because he felt like he was stagnant. He wasn't getting the experience and exposure outside of his group. And I said, well, have you talked to your manager about it? And he said, not really. I just kind of expect it to happen to me. That's the entitlement aspect a little bit.
Right.
So what if I commit to being your sponsor? Let me talk to you about what sponsorship means. And we kind of talk through that. This is no feather in my cap. Certainly it was a team effort, but the gentleman ended up staying, certainly. And he ended up staying, which is great. It's been about a month and a half now since I started working with him, since we were able to retain this young man. And he's tremendously talented. And, being able to work with him and giving him opportunities to do things that will challenge him professionally and grow his career is exactly what he's been aching for and exactly something that I love watching and supporting doing. So, we met yesterday. I feel like I have these meetings until I just got off one. I had one yesterday, but I just met with him yesterday. His name is Andrew. Brilliant young man. And he told me how he wants to sponsor kind of a best practices forum across the entire organization. 7,000 employees. He works in this type of function, and there's probably dozens, maybe hundreds. I don't even know. I never really sat down to think of people who do his type of work, because I feel like we're doing it differently. I'd like to I'd like to start a forum of best practice, collaboration, share, knowledge transfer, and that's something to sponsor. Great. Now let me help you kick that off. To do this effectively, now I can help kind of layer in the mentoring bit, which is, here's how you build a charter for a program like this. Here's how you garner support across the organization. Here's where I can help by pulling in my counterparts across the other divisions and identifying who the right people are to co-chair this program with you. And he left completely enthused, at least I think he did. I interpreted that he did. We're meeting in a month to kind of build that charter. And our goal is to kind of help him develop himself and lead this change. And in doing so, he'll get exposure. In doing so, he'll learn something new. And in doing so, he's building his brand at the business. And that's really sponsorship, is providing them the opportunities to realize their own growth, but giving them the opportunities, or at least providing them access to opportunities that you can help accelerate, even though you're not doing it for them. So.
Right. That's why I love doing this podcast, is hearing stories like that. That's a great example of leadership, in my opinion. And I love that your company has formalized that and created structure around that. I wish more companies did that.
Yeah.
Because that there are so many people, like I was reading a study a while back, like the number one reason people leave an organization is they feel like they don't have a voice or that path,
Yeah. It's certainly, and it's not uncommon, right? I mean, most organizations, larger organizations, will do employee engagement surveys and scores on a yearly basis.
Right.
We do them. We take them super seriously, and we employ the learnings out of there. We employ the following year and years forward, right, to ensure that we're improving the satisfaction of our employees, the engagement, the optimism, and thus retention and so on and so forth. Again, it's that circular motion: engage employees, great results, and every single time we do them, there are always the same common themes, right? Well, one of the common themes is, poor performance isn't managed. It's always is a common theme because, people work in teams, and
right,
you always get the person who comes in a group project and shows up the last day and puts their name on the the worksheet, hands it to the professor and says, "Yep, I was there." Right?
Oh yeah.
So you get a lot of that, and then you get the person who's really busting their butt and putting in the work and doing 99% of the heavy lifting, and not rewarded or recognized for that effort. So it's something that I think every organization, every senior leader needs to be acutely aware of, is that there's always going to be a concern that we're not managing appropriately the underperformers, at least perception wise, and that we're not recognizing top performers. And the biggest risk, of course, as you know, is it's not that those lower performers you're not managing out. That's a risk to your business, certainly. You're managing up or managing out, whatever, hopefully managing out. That's a risk to your business. The bigger risk is that your top performers are leaving. When your top 25 are going away because they don't feel like they're being recognized, then all you're left with are the underperformers, and that's not okay. So
not at all. Not at all. No, I love that.
Super important to stay focused on.
It really is. Let's transition a bit to talk about something I'm very passionate about, CRM. Do you love it or do you hate it?
Yes. I guess the short answer to that would be I love it more than I hate it. And maybe it's just a function of the systems I've used historically. I love this. I love a CRM from a leadership perspective for what it can provide me, right? So the insights it provides at a macro level, the reporting I get out of it, the top line kind of detail that gets aggregated up for me with a couple clicks of a button or delivered to me by an operations analyst is hugely impactful, right? Being able to see that and visualize and interpret what is otherwise structured data, large database in a very meaningful way is super helpful. As a sales executive, I love it and hate it. Our CRM and our system is integral to our processes. I don't just mean sales processes. I mean, it's what kicks off a contract. It's what kicks off our fulfillment. It's what kicks off a implementation team being assigned. It kicks off all these processes inside and touches multiple different systems outside. The CRM really is a major, if you think about hub and spoke type of workflow, there's probably several hubs, one being a billing system, and our CRM is right in the middle. I mean, it really does touch so many different spoke systems. So as a sales rep, I love it because I can get in there and I can do the work that I need one time and not have to go out to multiple systems. It kicks off all these workflows. As a sales rep, I hate it because it's not really being, at least our CRM historically, and we're in the middle of a transition, wasn't really a CRM. It was a finance team. Right? I mean, the people who used the most, got the most value out of it wasn't the sales reps, and that's counterintuitive. It was the finance team and the senior leadership team pulling insights out. And when that's your primary benefit, something's wrong with your CRM.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
I see that a lot when I ask, like, well, tell me about your CRM, and they'll start talking. I'm like, wait a minute, what CRM are you using? I found out it's really not a CRM. It's some other tool that they co-opted and tried to make it a CRM.
Sure.
And so I imagine that's a big part of why you guys are transitioning to a new CRM. What is your definition of success for your new CRM platform?
Oh boy. Again, if you ask that question to me from, wearing a marketing hat versus a strategy hat versus a sales hat, I'll probably give you a different answer. I'll take it from the sales lens. Again, our operations team touches the CRM from an implementation perspective. So success can look vastly different depending on who you're asking. From my chair, if I'm wearing a sales hat, success looks like enabling the salesperson, like really making them efficient. Again, going back to that efficiency play, the more time you can take out of their administrative duties and put them into the field, talking to customers, being present, negotiating, just doing discovery, qualifying, prospecting. I mean that's where we want as much time spent there. So success for me means optimizing the workflows that a CRM should be capable of performing in as little time, with as little touch as possible for the salesperson. But providing them the benefit that they need, which really is to operate as a CRM, a customer relationship management tool, which should have everything from existing contracts, existing spend, contacts, volume, transactions based. We're transaction based as well, subscription based business. So understanding the nuances between different product levels and suites of solutions that customers may use. Leads coming in through there, and being able to nurture them or promote them to opportunities, being able to kind of manage just all interactions and start to load kind of artifacts from engagement with customers in a very easy way. Historically, for us to load an artifact into CRM, we'd have to open up the CRM, drag it over, do X, Y, and Z. And the new system we're going to has capabilities as simple as like you email to yourself and loads into your CRM with the right kind of tags, and that's efficiency, right? I mean, if that saves, again, we're not my division, our business as a whole is probably greater than 1,000, maybe 1,500 salespeople. My division is not that big, it's maybe 100 folks at best. 100 sales folks. But if you can save 30 minutes a week across 100 sales folks, that is meaningful, right? It's quite a bit.
That's called ROI.
Yeah, that's right. It's another FTE that you're adding to the workforce. And by the way, coming full circle, you're providing better client satisfaction or employee satisfaction, right?
Yeah.
And that's a huge part. So success for me would be really enabling our salespeople to be as efficient as possible and get from a CRM what a CRM is intended to do, not be an administrative reporting tool for management. And that's unfortunately our current state situation today. So it's viewed as an administrative reporting tool.
Now, I love that you guys are using your CRM across the organization. That's something I preach all the time. For people that maybe aren't structured that way, that are listening to this, what advice do you have for them about the reasons why you want to extend CRM throughout the organization?
Oh boy, it's kind of the same reasons you would employ common sales methodology, right? So there's benefit in being on a common vernacular or common system, just in terms of efficiency. People are in the same system, they get to know it, they get to use it. There's subject matter expertise and cross training that happens. Those are all soft things. The hard benefits simply are it's one system of record. I mean, it is easy to go into a single system of record, as as most companies are moving digital transformation and moving into the world of having data at their fingertips. Siloed information doesn't work, right? You need it in one central place. You need it in a structured manner. You need to have everything at your fingertips in one repository, or certainly you can have it in multiple, but it's hard to connect multiple systems together and make them work seamlessly. When you have a single operating system that is built for a specific purpose and has modular capabilities to expand out for purposes of project management or operations, or we do data audits, and everything kind of runs through what could run through our CRM system, it becomes that system of record. Now, it's not the only system of record, but it is a primary system of record for a business that is we're a business rooted in data and analytics. So we understand the value of kind of having everything central. And that's probably the biggest benefit, is as you start to think more broadly and really start to capture information, or need to capture information, you don't have to go plucking it from 15 different places and try to stitch it together.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you're also, by creating that single source of truth or record, that now the whole organization can leverage that. The people downstream from sales can see what's coming. They can proactively plan and adjust, and as opposed to always fighting fires of, oh hey, we have this high priority project, drop whatever else you're doing, we need you to do this. That's there's so many benefits. We could go on and on and on talking about just that. We have come up on our time here on Sales Lead Dog. Jeff, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been great listening to you. If people want to reach out and connect with you personally, if they want to learn more about LexisNexis and what you guys are doing, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, you can reach me on LinkedIn under Jeff Diamond. Jeffrey Diamond, I think will be a link somewhere associated with the podcast. And then, the direct way to contact me would be via email. You can reach me at jeffrey.diamond@LexisNexisRisk.com.
Yeah, that's awesome. Jeff, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been great listening to you.
Thank you for having me.
As we end this discussion on Sales Lead Dog, be sure to subscribe to catch all our episodes. On social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Watch the videos on YouTube, and you can also find our episodes on our website at impellercrm.com/Sales Lead Dog. Sales Lead Dog is supported by Impeller CRM, delivering objectively better CRM for business, guaranteed.